What's up, guys? Welcome back to Discuss Hawkeye, the show where we discuss Hawkeye episode 5, Ronin. Full disclosure, guys, we had some technical issues recording this episode last week. We had some audio. It was not Jace's fault. It was on my end, definitely. But we had some audio issues, so we lost about an hour of our podcast last week, which is why you guys didn't get an upload then. But we are going to do an abbreviated version of kind of restate our thoughts and go through scene by scene for this one. And hopefully give you guys some content for episode 5 before we get into the finale. With that being said here, just an overview of the podcast as we do go over our general thoughts. We hop into a scene-by-scene recap after, and then we give our predictions on where we think the show is going to go. Predictions might be a little light since both of us have already seen the finale, but we're going to be covering 5 and try to maybe go over some of the predictions that we had before we saw what actually went down here. Before we hop into our general thoughts, guys, if you guys are listening on the podcast platform, make sure to share the podcast or rate 5 stars, do anything to help the show that way. If you guys are watching on YouTube video, make sure to like and subscribe on the video. That really helps us get seen on there. Just to get started, what is the writer, director, and the title for episode 5, Ronin?
Episode 5 that was perfect. Episode 5 is indeed titled Ronin. Thank you very much. Directed by Burton Birdie and written by Jenna Noel Frazier.
Fantastic. And Jace, what were your thoughts on episode 5, and where would you rank it with the other episodes in the series?
I'd probably say that up at that point, so with 5 and excluding the finale, of course, I would definitely say that it's probably my second favorite. I think it was definitely just slightly under 3. I still think 3 was like the best one, hands down, up until this point. And just a wee bit better than 4, if I were to throw that out there. So yeah, that's where I would rank it overall.
Absolutely. I would probably put it closer, like in that mid tier with the episode 1 and 2. So not as good as episode 3. I guess you're right. It would be in that mid tier. I'd probably put it below episode 1 and 2, honestly, just because a lot of the stuff that happened we really saw coming for the most part, and there wasn't a lot of it was a lot of setting up for the episode that we get into that comes after this. So it was a lot of just kind of laying the groundwork. We did have some really cool reveals, but I thought they were done in kind of unceremonious ways towards the end, which we'll talk about when we get to that point there. But yeah, I'd probably put it as like my second least favorite, but not bad. I think it's in that zone with episode 1 and 2. So we're going to go ahead and hop into our scene by scene recap for episode 5. So the episode starts here. This is kind of we've been introduced to Yelena in last episode. We start with this flashback to 2018, which was a very eventful year for the MCU and the Avengers and everything. So we go back to 2018, and we're in some kind of snowy landscape, and she is breaking into a mansion with another Hawkeye operative. Another Black Widow operative, and they meet the person that owns the house. They think that she's being kind of held hostage or being held there against her will, but she's actually not. There's a quick kind of fight scene between them. And then after they kind of find out that she runs the house and everything, Yelena takes a trip to the bathroom to kind of wash her face. And we get this awesome transition where we see some very familiar dust come up and her kind of turn to ash and then kind of reappear. She reappears in the house there, comes out and finds out that 5 years have passed, and in that amount of time, some tragic news. She gets some tragic news about her sister. What'd you think of that scene from start to finish when when they kind of find the house and go through that, and she goes through her blip experience, and then finds out the tragic news about Natasha?
I do like the different perspective of the blip that we've been able to see within the Disney Plus shows, between this and then Monica Rambeau and WandaVision, and kind of seeing just like how it is perceived from different angles. You know, when Monica came back, there was a bunch of chaos and crazy issues in a hospital, a lot of people around. This is much more isolated. They're just within one location. So to kind of see the reaction just focused on her, Yelena herself was really intense and I think interesting, and she acted it off very well. There was definitely one part of it though that I just kind of was thrown for a loop for, that is when she came back. You know, I do think the effect of it looked really cool, right? The visual effect was awesome, so props to them for doing it like that. But it was kind of funny that she blipped away and then she reforms and sees everything reforming around her, where you would almost expect that it would just be like she blips back into everything already being that way. I think honestly, if they just kind of did the animation in reverse, like showed the walls changing and then have her reform and rematerialize, if you will, then it would have made more sense.
Yeah.
That's just nitpicking. It's not like I had an issue, I guess. It would just made you think, like, I wonder what the true parameters are of this whole blipping situation.
Yeah, I echo a lot of those thoughts too. I don't understand, and again, these are nitpicks for sure. But in the vein of nitpicking, I don't really understand the blip logics, like how everything kind of logically works with the blip. Because if it's stating that when the snap occurs, when the Iron Man snap occurs, everyone comes back to where they initially blipped to begin with, which she was in that bathroom. Then it presents a lot of challenges for our heroes, especially ones that maybe were on Thanos' planet at the time that they were blipped out. When they blip back in, when they just appear back there, it's kind of fuzzy about the logic as about how the reappearance works. I think one theory for that would be the intention of the snapper. So like Iron Man snaps everyone back into existence with the intention that they're going to be safe, then I guess the magic of the Infinity Gauntlet would put them back in places where they would probably be safe potentially. So it could be the intention of the snapper that plays into that as well. And yeah, like the room kind of reappearing is a really cool effect. And I think that's really all that they were going for, was just kind of this cool effect of someone coming out of a blip. But yeah, it does maybe logically stretch things a little bit there. Kate comes back home to her penthouse. She is very distraught after her argument with Clint on the rooftop, where he pretty much said, like, go home, we're not partners, and had his, like, throw a rocket Lassie moment where he's like, get out of here, like, and and he kind of tells her to, like, go away and to kind of give this whole thing up. She comes home very distraught to her mother. Her mom is obviously heartbroken that her daughter is kind of dealing with this kind of pain, and tries to kind of console her. And they have like a scene where they're talking on her bed about how she doesn't really think she's cut out to be a hero, and her mom agrees with her and says, like, there's plenty of things you can do aside from being a hero. Like, your path can be different depending on where it goes. Yeah, I thought this was a very touching thing. I thought Vera Farmiga was very good as Eleanor in this scene. I thought that was a very well acted scene between both of them. But I definitely thought I noticed her really imbuing that character with a lot of emotion. A character that we've been very suspicious of through the entire series, for good reason. But they definitely talk about like her little bow and how she first kind of got the idea to become Hawkeye, and it really goes through her kind of emotional arc. We get pretty much a mirror of that same scene between Kazi and Maya, where Kazi is treating her wounds after her fight. She kind of seems a little more emotionally reserved than Kate is. So Kazi is kind of signing with her and telling her that, she needs to be open about her emotions, and that, if it hurts, to just tell him it hurts, that it's him there. She doesn't need to be so guarded. And she seems to kind of flippantly say, like, all right, I opened up to you. It does hurt. Okay. Like, I opened up, and I thought that was a fun character touch, just because it seems like she's so tightly woven that, it's really hard for her to open up about anything. And, it also shows a level of trust between her and Kazi that I think she doesn't have with a lot of other people. But what did you think of those two scenes and kind of how they mirrored each other between Kate's mom, and treating her wounds and consoling her, and then Kazi doing the same thing for Maya and kind of showing that mirror there, and then their interactions and stuff?
Yeah, it was a nice little look into each of their assets of their characters that maybe we haven't seen before, like a deeper level of their personality, if you will, that kind of doesn't get a sense to shine unless it's a case like this, right? Where after a battle where you're most vulnerable, depending on who you're with, of course. So the first scene with Kate and her mom, I definitely liked quite a bit. I did think it was kind of funny that Kate just kind of like completely regurgitated everything that they had done up until that point. But I also can understand, because it's her mom. And at the end of the day, who else is she going to confide in and console in other than her more than anything, even if it is some really crazy stuff like that. I do agree that the acting on Vera Farmiga's side was very well handled there. She does a good job of kind of giving this presence of, you can tell I'm up to no good, but I also am a genuine caring mother. Regardless of what how you want to say they may offset each other, that's something that you got to give credit for that comes through in the performance. And then on the other hand, I agree that it seems like it's very clear Kazi and Maya have some sort of I don't want to say a relationship that's anything more than platonic, but a level of trust that doesn't seem to be present with anything else. And they've hinted at that throughout the show. There keeps coming up with these little moments where Kazi will be like, hey, look, you don't have to worry about saying this to me, or, you know, hey, these guys haven't learned sign language in the past 24 hours, like, you're fine. Little things like that, you could tell that there's more history between those two. And so that was kind of nice to be able to see the different aspects of each of those characters.
We're in this moment where kind of Kate's at her darkest point, where she feels she's kind of lost all her confidence in that moment, and she's a very confident character, so she's kind of been stripped away of that after that Clint ordeal, and kind of questioning whether or not she's fit to be a hero. And I like that it presents this very easy out for her, where it's like she could just stop right now. Clint gave her it out. Her mom is kind of consoling her and say, listen, you're going to have financial security, you're going to have a job, whatever, just kind of drop this. Let's kind of go on. And she's presented with this very easy out. But as most heroes do, decides to go the harder route, decides to get back into the fray. And it's a choice that she makes. It's not like she's forced into it by external circumstances. It's a very inward choice that she makes to go on and become that. And kind of turn into that hero that she wants to be, which I think is a really smart move for the writers to kind of give her that choice to make and have her make it. It goes back to Kate is going back to her burnt apartment, which I didn't think we'd see again, her cool little Batcave college apartment, and all their stuff there. She's kind of visiting back there, I guess, to like reminisce or maybe have a moment to herself to think about things. And she doesn't have long, because she's greeted by Yelena Belova, who is making some mac and cheese, some easy mac on the stove. And we get this great scene where she is kind of taken aback by a person that tried to kill her, being so cordial and making her mac and cheese and wanting to have dinner with her and everything. And we get this really great banter between the two. She's trying to get some information about Clint who she very much wants to kill, thinking that he was integral in Natasha Romanoff's demise. So in between that, Clint goes to Grill's apartment, and he is going to be staying with Grills throughout this. Grill says, don't get a hotel, you could stay on my couch. So they're setting up that, you know, Grills has made a return after the LARPing sequence, and he's going to be kind of assisting Clint and being a safe house for him in that bit there. But what were your thoughts here about the whole scene with Haley Steinfeld and Florence Pugh chewing up the scenery, and the kind of realization that Yelena is looking to kill Clint? She's on the hunt now.
I love the dynamic between those two. There's a lot of charisma presented in that scene, and it was very well acted on both ends. So to see them come together was just really nice and fulfilling, because, you know, it got a chance to give us what we had been looking for. We wanted Yelena to be more than just like a cameo in the show, and it helped develop Kate even further, because, like you said, at this point, she's really on the outskirts of things, and she is actively trying to get herself back into it. And maybe she's kind of forced into that situation a little bit, but handles it pretty well. She easily just could have been like, you know, got into the apartment, saw Yelena, and just like, I'm done with this. I have nothing to do with this anymore. I'm not with Clint. I'm not his partner. But she stayed composed, held her own, defended Clint, which is a really cool, thing for her, I guess, to do out of everything, right? Instead of just kind of cowardly backing away. And I got to hand it to, as far as Florence Pugh, just for the acting in that scene. It's funny because, you know, I could see where maybe someone would start to pick it apart and say maybe she's overdoing it with the comedic aspect of it. Like, it wasn't really getting serious until a certain point, but I didn't have any issue with that. I thought it fit really well. It started to like establish a foundation between them. And then all of a sudden the serious questions started to kind of turn their head. And I like the whole like progression of that scene.
Yeah, I will say I think the scene works because of the performers. I think with other actresses, if it wasn't Haley Steinfeld and Florence Pugh, who for my money are two of the most talented up and coming actresses in Hollywood that are working right now. I just think they're great in everything they do, really. I think they really elevate the material here. I think in other hands, this could have been a very kind of eye-rolly. I think it was a little underwritten. Some of the banter went on a little longer than maybe it should have. But I think the reason it works is because they kind of really sell it with the performances, and they're so likable as characters that it really works there. She has some really great lines where she says she eats reindeer. And I did want to get your quick thoughts on hot sauce on mac and cheese. What do you think about, what are your thoughts on mac and cheese hot sauce?
So as far as, I've never actually had hot sauce on mac and cheese. The closest that I've had to it is like buffalo chicken in mac and cheese. And I guess that's kind of reminiscent. Yeah. And that's not bad. I prefer regular mac and cheese, but I'm not like against that. So if it's anything like the buffalo chicken, then I'm okay with it, I guess.
Yeah, I think hot sauce and mac and cheese is an insane concept. I'm not though. I will say I'm not a hot sauce. I'm not a hot sauce fan, but I do kind of silently judge people that put hot sauce in their mac and cheese. So anybody listening, if that's you, we may not get along if you do that in public or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. But the way Florence Pugh switched midway through the sequence where she really went serious and went like, I'm actually going to kill him. I thought the way she sold that was really good. It would have been really easy for us to not take her seriously after the kind of banter and stuff that they just did, but to really see the flip switch in her and when she starts to go, it's kind of business and I'm here to avenge Natasha and it's very serious. And she's very intimidating too. And I think Kate really notices that too as something. She's like, I really don't want to mess with this girl here. So I thought the scene did everything it really needed to. And I thought it was really well. It was one of the highlights of the episode, was just kind of seeing them go back and forth. She makes her patented Black Widow exit out the window. And we go back to Grill's apartment where Grills tells Clint that he's going to kind of sleep on his couch with Lucky there. And Kate goes back to her penthouse apartment where her mother, Eleanor, using the information that she received from Kate, like you said in the past scene, her mother, Eleanor, called the cops on her fiance, Jack. And Jack is getting arrested because he's involved in some money laundering thing with Sloane. And as he's being arrested, he's very chipper. He has that kind of I'm rich and the law really doesn't apply to me kind of vibe to him. And he's not worried in the slightest. He says, I would have done the same thing if I was you, honey. I must be being framed. I'm going to get my name cleared and I'll be back in time for your Christmas party. I did love his kind of arrogance in the face of the situation and stuff. He gets escorted out. And then the next scene is Clint is at the memorial. He's at the memorial for the Avengers saving New York. And he has this great scene where he has an internal moment and kind of a prayer to Natasha and apologizes about what he's about to do. What did you think of those two scenes where Jack gets taken away on Eleanor's call? And then the scene where Jeremy Renner has that touching moment talking to Natasha in front of the Avengers memorial?
I love the scene where Jack gets taken away, strictly because as far as it, I can't help but crack a laugh when I happen to see how eerily and bizarrely nonchalant both of them are, being Kate's mom and Jack, when this is going down, but in different ways, right? Like you said, Jack is almost like he's just like, yeah, this is just, it's a regular part of the day. Not like this happens to him all the time, but you'd swear that this was no crazy event by any means. It's just like, all right, I'm just gonna go run this errand and I'll be back. And then you got Kate's mom on the other hand, who is just like stone cold killer vibes with this complete blank face. Like, if that doesn't give a dead giveaway that she's up to something, I don't know what does. There was already the fact that when Kate earlier was disclosing this, that she still was just like, okay, I'm gonna look into that. And it's like, that's it. And then now you compare it with this as well. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like, come on.
Yeah, it's a great point that she does. It's kind of been like the whole season. And I get that it's Kate's mom. So Kate would, last person she would expect to be involved in anything, right? But at the same time, there's just so many like huge red flags that just based on her performance, where you're just like, how are you not like beside yourself that your fiance like was money laundering for like the mob and he's now going to be arrested and your marriage is off and all this stuff? And she just seems so like, yeah, I found out that it was legitimate, Kate, and now he's getting arrested. And you'd think Kate would be like, are you sure you're okay? Because like, you know what I mean? There's like no emotion coming out of you. Or when she actually gives her the news about it, there's just like no emotion. It's just like, okay, yeah, like you said, I'll check into it. And it's like I feel like even Kate in that moment would be like, this seems weird that she's not like distraught about this at all. It seems like something she would be beside herself about.
Exactly. And then with continuing to the scene with Hawkeye at the memorial, thought it was a very touching little scene that I think actually pulled more emotion maybe than even they were aiming for, just because of the fact that I think this goes right back to like how we were talking about the conversation with Florence and Haley. It's the acting that elevates it. I think that's really fair to say with this whole show, is that the acting elevates it. And then this next scene with Clint is a good example of that as well, because when he's talking to Natasha in this scene, it's really just showcases like, hey, he's putting on a great performance. It's something that kind of pulls and tugs at the heartstrings a little bit, as far as when he's saying about how he misses her, and you could tell that he's a wreck now that she's gone. or has been, I should say, a wreck for a while now. The only part that I don't really get is knowing what takes place later in the episode, which I know we'll speak on. I don't understand what he's apologizing for so heavily like that. Just strictly because, spoiler alert, nothing really big happens, I would say, that justifies such an apology. So other than that, I still really like the scene, but I feel like it kind of amps up something more, or kind of builds up some tension for something that doesn't really pay off quite as much.
Yeah, I think though the main thing, and it was kind of sold a little high for what actually happened, but I think the main thing was just like I think he vowed never to put the Ronin suit on again, and he was going to do it in this instance to like try to get out of something there. So I think it was very it was kind of oversold as what he was going to maybe do, and we'll talk about that when we get to that scene, because I think there's a way that it could have gone that maybe would have been a little more compelling for me, but one of the notes I had about the scene was I thought it was a really smart choice to have him take his hearing aid out right before he started. I thought, and then the sound kind of like zones in on him, and it makes the moment so much more intimate between him kind of speaking to the posthumous Natasha. And again, just to echo your point too about Renner's performance, I think Jeremy Renner did a fantastic job in the scene. He's done such a good job throughout this entire show, and I think because he plays a stoic character, he doesn't get as much buzz about his acting because he's playing it very reserved and understated as Hawkeye is as a person. But he in these moments, he really lets his emotion come through and shows kind of how much pain he's in facing that loss from Natasha. So I think he did a fantastic job in this scene and every scene he's been in so far the series. I did want to get your quick opinion on the memorial. It's a plaque. So I remember watching this and going like, wait, there's a plaque on the right side of an overpass that says, "Oh, thanks Avengers for saving New York from an alien invasion that killed all these people," or something like that. I was expecting, if they're, I get why they do it. It adds to the world building of the MCU, but I was expecting some gigantic, like, Statue of Liberty sized, like, memorial for, having saved New York from alien invaders, and it being such an integral turning point in world history. For it to be something, a plaque the size of something you would get for having, like, the best coffee in New York, seems very, very strange to me. What did you think of that?
It was maybe a tad bit underwhelming given the circumstances. Like, you would expect to see that plaque from any other lower cased circumstances. I will say, I'm sure that perhaps they had done some sort of a memorial in like a more fitting location, that maybe was more accessible by more people, but they still wanted to acknowledge the actual like spot that it first went down.
That's true.
Which is kind of funny it's even funny to label it down to a spot, to be honest with you, because it's like they just came together throughout the entirety of New York. Like, how could you really say like, well, we looked through the security cameras on the street light and we found that this exact intersection was where they first got in that circle. Remember that circle pose?
And that's what I'm assuming. That's the spot where they did the Joss Whedon circular around pose maybe, and they were like, oh, this is where the Avengers first fully assembled or something. But it seems very arbitrary for people to kind of create a plaque based on that.
The other part that I do want to squeeze in, though, is the fact that they do kind of hint that maybe there is something. So I mentioned that maybe there's a memorial in a different location. Yelena makes a hint that she's there to see the new and improved Statue of Liberty. And, I won't go into like a whole crazy different discussion because I know this could start up a whole new thing. But all I will say is in another Marvel project, you do see that they're basically adding the Captain America shield to the Statue of Liberty. So, I think that's the only reason I was okay with it.
Seems a little more fitting. Let's see. It goes back to Kate. She is making her choice. Like I said, she's kind of sitting in her room and deciding whether this hero thing is something she actually wants to do, whether she feels like it's worth it, whether she feels like she's good enough. And she's kind of having all of these thoughts in her room here before deciding that, this is what she's going to do. This is what she's wanted to do since he was a kid, since Clint inspired her to become a hero to begin with. So she gets on the phone and does what heroes do in that situation, which is just to phone bomb Clint and try to get him to answer the phone and tell where he is so she can find him. She's just going to annoy him back into being partners again, which is her kind of MO there. It goes after that scene to, we get the Trust a Bro movers are driving and they're giving us classic tracksuit wearers. So they're talking about Run DMC and some Olympians and a bunch of other people that are very they're pioneers of tracksuit fashion. and they're kind of paying homage to that all the while they're playing Run DMC's Christmas in Holly, which I thought was a great music choice for that scene there. But they get into the parking lot for like their hideout, I guess, and we get an arrow through the window with a secret message, and it's Ronin telling Maya to meet them where she first met the Ronin, which is where her father died, which is, I think, Fat Boy Auto, which is a clue as to something we're going to get into later in the episode as well. It goes right into a scene where Clint goes back to retrieve the Ronin suit from the locker, and he has a kind of a very serious phone call with Laura where he's telling her that things really just got real. He's kind of telling her that Yelena is hunting him. The big guy might get involved, quote unquote, the big guy. He's very transparent with her as always, and she is very supportive and just says, do what you have to do to protect the family. You don't need permission from me. Like, I have your back no matter what. And it's a very kind of emotional conversation for Clint there. What were your thoughts on those scenes from her making the choice to kind of be a hero and calling Clint, the Trust a Bro Mover scene with the tracksuit stuff and getting the message from Ronin to meet at the auto shop, and then the phone call with Clint and Laura?
I just love the further establishment that, you know, they're making Kate, like you brought up before, active about wanting to be back into this, right? That she's trying to be a hero and not really kind of just placed in that situation against her will. And it's like, well, you just had to do this, so here you go. You know, like I want to, you know, kind of redeem myself, if you will, because I think she knows that she didn't exactly do that great with the last mission that they were on. So that was really nice to see. The tracksuit guys just always make me laugh. I just love the whole, like, what do we look like, the Royal Tenenbaums? I'm just like, yeah. So again, with their humor landing without really having to do much, I like how they kind of keep it just, you know, sprinkled in at the right places. It seems just appropriate when they do place it in. And then leading into the phone call as far as with Clint and his wife, I do actually love their relationship probably more than like any other couple that's in the MCU, because it's so nice and relieving to see how comforting and there for him that she is, you know, that there's never any questions about anything. I could easily picture where they would take the angle of like, you're doing what, where with some young woman, you know, and just not having like a trusting attitude, especially because of the thing that's happened with Natasha in the past, like having such an established relationship with her, but just how like accepting that she is of everything and understanding, I think is absolutely phenomenal, especially because Clint's already clearly going through enough. It's nice that he has something like that.
It's almost sad how refreshing it is to see like a very positive, supportive relationship in media. Like, yeah. I don't know, like it seems, and I get why, because it's such an easy, rife thing for conflict in shows, is to have a relationship with secrecy or jealousy or judgment somewhere in between, and have that be a fulcrum for the character, where maybe he has to hide things from the wife, or the wife has to hide things from the husband, and it's this point of conflict where you're wondering how they're going to resolve that. It seems so weird that it feels so different here, where they're having this conversation and their entire relationship throughout the whole series has just been this foundational rock for Clint to go to. And it's great that he has this emotional rock that he can always lean on in these circumstances. And there's nothing else to it. Like, it's just like, there's not like some kind of untruth that's being hidden from him, or some kind of secrecy that's changing things. It's exactly what it is. And it's almost weird that it feels so different. You know what I mean? It's weird that apparently that's so rare in stuff nowadays that feels odd. It goes out of that scene too. We get this really great action scene where Ronin is going to meet Maya. Maya has brought all of her henchmen. Kazi is set up as a sniper perch above the auto shop. And we get this great action scene where he kind of takes out her thugs, takes out Kazi on the roof, and then it's all set in this used car lot with Christmas lights above it and everything as well. He takes her down, and before she thinks he's going to kill her, and he doesn't, he takes his mask off and reveals that he is Clint Barton, that is the Ronin, and he says that her boss is the one that tipped him off initially to go kill her father, and that he's just a weapon. And that's not there was nothing kind of personal about what he did. He was just a weapon that was aimed by somebody that had more nefarious intentions in her boss, which we'll get to later in the episode there. What were your thoughts on that scene, the action sequence, and kind of the way he took out the henchmen, the way he took out Kazi, the fight scene between he and Maya, and then the realization that both Maya now knows that he's the Ronin, and her boss is the one that kind of sent him on that mission to begin with?
I loved the whole vibe that the scene gave off because it gave me a very Batman feeling, and I love Batman, so that was really cool. But this is kind of to helpfully help clarify what I was talking about before, where I was a little confused as far as like this heavy apology given by Clint and Natasha, because I thought he was about to just go on a murdering spree. Like I thought he was going to go out there, and I didn't know how they're going to do it because the show has talked about these deep subjects, but it's not like they've seen, we haven't seen anyone die. So I was a little, kind of confused. I'm like, are we about to see him like officially take out the tracksuit gang or take out Maya? Which obviously she's got a show coming up, so you knew that wasn't going down. But all the more, like I said, a little conflicting because it's like, okay, yeah, he put the suit on, but it was only to really prove a message. It was just to make a point. There wasn't actually anything like that was severely detrimental about him putting it back on. Like, I'm actually starting to be the Ronin again. I love the point of just like that he kind of made to Maya, just very stern, like, hey, look, enough's enough, cut this out. Without really having to do much of anything else than just being stern and intimidating, right? Just putting his foot down and like, enough's enough. And I think that was a very eye-opening experience for Maya. I really think you can kind of tell that not like she's fully flipped. It's not like a light switch thing, which I do like that as well. It's like a regular, believable transition, but that she does kind of start to, raise an eyebrow a little bit of like, maybe I don't know everything that's going on here, and I need to dig a little deeper myself before I start jumping to conclusions and throwing my rage in any given direction.
I think him saying that and him raising that possibility that her boss may have had something to do with it. I think that things start kind of falling into place for her, where she starts realizing maybe suspicious things that she didn't realize before. So I think that's a good characterization for it. Kate comes in with the assist at the end as Maya kind of gets the better of Clint for a second and goes for a killing shot before Kate comes in with the assist, and Clint gets away. Is how the scene ends there. What I'll say is I totally agree with your point that it seemed like he was going to do something a lot worse than he did based on that prayer that he gave to Natasha, that he was going to do something worse there. And I thought it was a little bit of a missed opportunity because what we had seen so far in the episode was Yelena and Kate talking about Clint's morality, and Yelena saying he's not the person you maybe think he is. He's done a lot of horrible things. He's killed a lot of people as Ronin. And then Kate saying, he's this redeemable paragon and this hero. And I thought this would have been a really perfect opportunity to kind of really amp up that struggle between the two of them for kind of Clint's morality. I thought what maybe should have occurred in this instance is Maya maybe tells him that she's not going to stop pursuing his family if he lets her go or something. And her kind of enraged and wanting vengeance says that, I know about your family. I'll go after your family next. And then in maybe a fit of rage where he's really concerned about maybe his family's safety at that point, he maybe turns around for a second and thinks about maybe ending it there. And then Kate kind of stops him from doing that, as opposed to stopping Maya from killing him. I thought that would have been a really, really great opportunity. It would have both showed Clint's love for his family and that he would really go the distance to protect them at all costs. It would have shown Maya's rage about her father and about how she's not going to just kind of let something go. And then it would have presented that moral quandary between Hawkeye and Yelena, between Kate and Yelena, where Kate maybe sees that maybe he's capable of doing some things she didn't think he was capable of. And then later in the season, Yelena realizing he maybe has more humanity than she thought he did. So it would have really heightened him as a morally great character. So I thought that was a little bit of a missed opportunity. I definitely think it still works the way that they did it, but I thought it really could have driven a lot of dramatic elements home if they had handled it that way. So yeah, it goes right to a scene where Maya finds Kazi after everything in the fray. He says, "Yeah, I was knocked out. Did you take him out?" And she says, "No, he got away." And that's when she raises the question, "Hey, you weren't around that night that my father got killed. Where were you? Why didn't you come to the meeting?" And he says, "Oh, I didn't get the call," which is kind of I feel like he could have come up with a better excuse after this amount of time. You would expect maybe you'll get that question at some point. Maybe have a better excuse in the holster that, "Oh, my phone didn't ring." You know what I mean? Or something like that. I thought that was a little weak, but they're setting up that she's very suspicious of Kazi now, and she's maybe suspicious of her uncle here, and that kind of sets that up into the next scene. It goes to the car scene with Clint and Kate, where Kate is telling him, "Hey, just so you know, Yelena wants to kill you," or she says that person that fought us wants to kill you, and Hawkeye says Yelena, showing that he knows who Natasha's sister is. But what did you think of those scenes between Kazi and Maya and Clint and Yelena, or Clint and Kate, where she's saying that Yelena might be hunting him?
Yeah. I think that, it was funny because I could have taken it one of two ways with Kazi. I
Mhm.
thought for a brief moment, I was like, maybe he's just telling the truth. Like, not saying I full on believe him, but it was almost like maybe that's it. I truly didn't get the call. Like, I don't, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
are you trying to, seriously pin this on me? But of course, they're all, bad guys. So you can't trust any of them or anything.
Mhm.
So I do agree. I think that was a little bit funny as far as like, that's the best. You couldn't say you were in the midst of like I was doing something else. Like your father sent me to do this. That's why I wasn't there. Something like that.
Right.
So definitely thought a little piss poor excuse on Kazi's end, but so be it. It was a great way to go ahead and raise the suspicions for Maya that much further. And then as far as moving forward with the whole like revelation of Clint knowing Yelena's identity, I think that makes perfect sense. They seem to have had Clint and Natasha such a relationship over the years that I can't imagine that he wouldn't know like close to everything about her, especially when it comes to the more personal info like family members that no one else would know. So I wasn't really surprised in the slightest to kind of see that what's the best way, that information being known, right? I wasn't
Mhm.
kind of taking it back to know that he knew that. If anything, it just made it that much more like impactful for him to realize like, oh crap, I thought it was bad enough that a Black Widow's coming after me. Now I realize who specifically it is. Great, now I gotta deal with something that I haven't wanted to deal with for a while. He doesn't want to talk about Natasha. Now he's got to deal with her sister.
Yeah, and I think he realizes why she's after him too, because I don't think obviously a lot of information about what happened in Endgame is not revealed to the public. Like the public really doesn't know what happened, but they do know that Clint and Natasha were together when she died, and that's what that person told Natasha or told Yelena after the Black Widow film in the post credit scene. So I think it falls into a place where he goes, oh, she probably thinks that I did this, and that's why she's after me. So it seems like a he's kind of resolved to that information and says, okay, well, I totally get why she's after me at this point. And then it goes into the final scene where we're at Grill's apartment. Kate is now with Clint after having saved him from Maya, and Lucky's there, Grills is there, and then Kate gets a very big phone call or text message from Yelena from an unknown number saying, hey, I thought you should know this. And we get a fuzzy image of Eleanor Bishop standing next to Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, who we've been hinting at could be possibly in the show for a long time now, and we finally get our first image of him. It's on the worst cell phone camera that I've ever seen, like an image, or maybe it looks like she took a picture with her phone of like a security camera potentially. I don't know, something like that, but that our last shot is a very fuzzy picture of our big bald antagonist here. What'd you think of that reveal of Kingpin and kind of how it worked out?
I did think it's funny because I was so happy that they revealed it that I think that's just why I'm okay with almost however it was done. I would almost like if we got a chance to see him, like if there would have been some like physical presence that was set, even if it
Mhm.
was just like showing him in person. But nonetheless, the photo obviously still does the same thing. And the biggest takeaway overall is no matter, again, like I said, how they did it, I was ecstatic to see that they actually brought Vincent D'Onofrio's character back. I'm extremely curious if they are ever going to fully clarify if this is the exact same iteration of the character from the Netflix series, or if this is supposed to be like, with the multiverse, like a variant, if you will,
Mhm.
like how Loki's terminology would throw it out, where he's still Kingpin, it's still Vincent D'Onofrio, but it's not going to be anything in relation to the Netflix series. So like I said, that's one of my biggest curiosities, but nonetheless, just to actually have him be there, reference to Hawkeye knowing that he's a big deal and everything, I thought was really cool. Obviously was
Mhm.
also not, I don't want to say a shock factor, but kind of nice to officially get the quote unquote shocking news that Eleanor was also up to no good within this and that they have something to, they're working together to some capacity. So it was
Mhm.
a really nice, cool reveal and a good way to end the episode.
Yeah, I agree. I was, just the sheer excitement and ecstatic, how ecstatic I was that Vincent D'Onofrio was finally confirmed and shown in the show. really overshadowed the fact that I had issues with how it was done. Because I remember thinking, like, this is such an anticlimactic reveal where she's just getting a text message from an unknown number. And it's not just that we're getting our first image of Kingpin in this kind of unceremonious way. It's also that she's getting her first realization that her mother, like this betrayal from her mother, is done in this unceremonious fashion too, where it's just this image that shows them both together, and Kate's coming to that realization there. It just seemed very undramatic, and it seemed like a very, very big character moment that was kind of this unceremonious little picture on a cell phone screen, and that was kind of it. So I get why you had to do it. You're kind of setting the stage for this next episode and the season finale. I just thought that information could have been revealed in a more dynamic way, both Kingpin's reveal as well as Kate finding out that Eleanor is maybe involved in some criminal dealings that she had no idea about prior to this, and that kind of betrayal that she felt. But yeah, that's how the episode ends here. If we can think back at this point in the show, what did you think was going to occur? Like, what were you thinking about going into the final episode?
I do know that probably one of my biggest thoughts, because my main things focused around Kingpin at this time, and I was definitely anticipating that Eleanor was like Kingpin's right-hand girl. Like, that was something I almost was looking at Eleanor and Jack's relationship as like a complete facade, that Jack thought it was real, but that simply he was a placeholder to kind of make it seem as though there was something that there's not going on, while secretly Kingpin and Eleanor were like, the king and queen of New York, if you will, running the show in the background. So at least I thought maybe that's what was the reveal was going to be, was that not only was her mom kind of up to no good, but maybe up to way more no good than she expected.
Her mother was always a huge suspect from honestly the first episode. We remember thinking like, there's something going on with her. You said it was like we were playing horse and she was ticking all the boxes of suspect, to play horse. There was a lot of red flags popping up for there. My other prediction for the last episode was, so I did still think Jack was a red herring. It was just oblivious to everything. And then my other prediction was, I thought the way Clint was going to convince Yelena that he's worthy of not getting killed is he's going to say something very personal about Black Widow and about Natasha that only her sister would know, and that's going to raise a suspicion of like, how would you know this unless she loved you, or unless you were unless you're being honest about your relationship with her. So I definitely had that as a prediction going into the last season. I can't remember if I had any other predictions here. I think did we predict anything about the Watch? I think I said I thought maybe it was Stark Tech. Like, I
think that was the furthest that we got.
Yeah, I think that was our main prediction about the Watch. But that was really our predictions about the episode there. But that wraps up episode 5, Ronin. So we're going to be doing the season finale in the next episode, in this next podcast here. If you guys are enjoying the podcast and enjoying kind of hanging out with us throughout this season, make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching on the YouTube channel. And make sure, if you're watching on the podcast, to either share the podcast with other people that you know like Hawkeye, or rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. It's definitely going to help us as well. Jace, do you have anything that you want to promo? Anything coming up at all that you want to talk about for your channel?
I'm excited to say that after taking a bit of an unintended hiatus for a little bit here during the holiday season, got a wave of content that I'm excited to have coming back out. So expect, as always, a variety of skits mixed in with everything, but definitely some reviews that I've kind of strayed away from as well, with some Marvel stuff. So Shang-Chi and Eternals are definitely going to be up on the list coming soon, but also please expect something for Spider-Man No Way Home from myself, as well as from like the whole Cinema Squad. We're going to be coming together to do kind of a live stream discussion about that. And then I'm not going to lie, even though it's been so great to discuss episode by episode, since I have not done my own episodic reviews, which I normally do for the Disney Plus shows, I will have like a Hawkeye season 1 breakdown review that'll kind of just be thrown out there as well. So
cool.
Be on.
Yeah, really excited, guys. Make sure to check the description. His channel is going to be linked in there. I did a review on Power of the Dog on the Disc Media, so you guys can check that out. That's a Netflix show that's probably going to be an Oscar contention at some point next year as well. I'm working on a review for The Tragedy of Macbeth, which is the new Coen Brothers film that I was able to get access to, so I'm working on that. It'll probably be up on the site in the next few days. And I'm working on some content for the Diss Track channel, so keep an eye out for those going forward. But that's going to wrap it up for us here, guys. I hope you guys are having a fantastic holiday season. As always, discuss amongst yourselves, and we'll see you guys next week.